All right. Here we go. PBR Monday, Spring 2022, number 7. Give the room a minute to populate here. As always, be sure to give StreamYard your credentials. If you're coming in through the Tour of Idaho Facebook page and you give StreamYard your credentials, your name will pop up whenever you try to enter a comment. If you're coming in through the Motorcycle Jazz Facebook page, or if you're coming in through YouTube, make sure you put your name at the end of your comment so that my guest and I can see who you are. We're going to spend the whole hour tonight with a guest. As all of you are aware, I have a very special guest, Jimmy Lewis, I'm going to bring on here in just a few minutes. I did get the day 8 stuff up today, the stuff that gets you from Salmon to North Fork. It's all up. I do need to add a little bit to the challenge point part of it. There are 2 challenge points out there. That's all they're going to be, but I want to put a little bit more information about the day out. 2 nice single track trails that you get to do that day, and it's a little over 100 miles from Salmon to North Fork, so you do need to not loiter too long in Salmon that day. I get going early in the afternoon so you can get to North Fork early in the evening, or else the next day won't be so great for you. So I don't want to spend too much time talking about anything else tonight because I don't. I'd like to have Jimmy on more often. He's a really busy guy, and I'm really pleased to have him as a guest tonight. But before I bring him in, I want to tee up how I met him, because I think that's part and parcel and informative as to where we're going to go tonight with this conversation. So I have been a teacher of something my entire professional career. I was a mountain guide early on, a certified mountain guide, member of the Guides Guild. I was a ski instructor, certified ski instructor. And I taught physics at the college level for 25 years. And I guess you could fairly say that I have a predilection for being attracted to things that are difficult to teach to other people. Physics is difficult because people get discouraged too easy. They think it's hard, and they think I'm never going to be able to get this, and they give up. Skiing and climbing are hard because they're in environments that are kind of scary. In climbing, it's the height that gets to people, and it makes it hard for them to unlock their brains a little bit. And in skiing, it's because it's a combination of height and angle and speed. And in skiing, the basic move that's required for you to be able to carve a turn is to drop your hip in to the turn really early to make it move downhill. To make snow fly off that uphill ski really early in the turn. And in order to do that, that's dynamic balance. You can't do that standing still. And in the beginning, it's kind of a leap of faith. It's really tough to get people to do that. That's like the single most important thing in skiing. And most people shy away from that. They want to do anything but project themselves into the fall line. Fear of the fall line is kind of innate. It's natural. Fear of heights is something that's innate in human beings. I took a psychology class in college once and found that out. So in all those disciplines, I was always fascinated by people who were really, really good teachers of those things. And I met some climbing guides in my day that were just brilliant. They knew how to inspire confidence, and they knew how to just show people a great time in the mountains. And those were the people that I learned from. And I was fortunate to be able to study from some very, very good mountain guides that taught me the craft. When I went into skiing, it was the same thing. I found some ski instructors through the PSI who were brilliant. And they took it so seriously. And the thing about ski instruction that's a lot like physics is that you can't break things down into small enough chunks. It's really difficult for, especially a talented skier sometimes, doesn't understand that the distance that they want to take this student from where they're at to where they want to go is too much. They can't get there. You have to break that down into some intermediate steps, and a lot of people don't get that. Sometimes it's better if you struggle to become a good skier. It'll make you a better ski instructor. Not only will you have more empathy, but you'll be aware of the fact that it's really difficult for most folks to get straight from your A to your B. There needs to be some intermediate steps in there, an A2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 maybe. Then it was physics, and physics is the same thing. I had some lousy, awful instructors of physics in college, and then I had some brilliant ones, some guys that were they were so inspirational, and they could convince you to do all that hard work that was required. Music is the same way. I haven't ever taught music professionally, but I have been taught. In fact, I posted something on social media today. Last few years, I've taken some really high-level clinics from guys like Larry Carlton and John Harrington and people like that. You know, brilliant guitar players that everybody's heard of. And those guys all tell you the same thing, that it's just work. You just got to sit down and work. You know, at some point, we couldn't play this instrument either, and we figured it out over time. The cool thing about those guys is they can really sit down and I took a clinic from Harrington where, you know, you play a thing that you composed for him, and he sits there and goes with you and tells you how to improve it, gives you techniques and things like that. And all those guys are really good at communicating what they know because they don't make the chunks too big. The criticism's not too harsh. They know how to get into your head and tell you this is where you are, and tell you authoritatively, this is what you're thinking when you do this. This is where you go in this next step. That's the most difficult thing in the world in teaching anything. For a few years, I was a senior editor at motorcycle.com, and I ran some of their big bike tests and did a lot of product testing and things like that. And one of the things that I was tasked with doing was going out and doing some reviews of motorcycle instruction. It was all street bikes. So I went to some of these schools, and none of these articles ever saw the light of day. So if you Google me up on motorcycle.com, you'll see some of the bike tests and stuff, but you won't see any of the stuff on any of these schools because they were terrible. And they were run by people who were big names, and I wasn't going to say I liked the school and I thought it was good when it wasn't. Sometimes the tuition at these schools was $3,000 or $4,000 for 3 days. You know, you go to Vegas typically is a popular place, and you're out the Las Vegas Motor Speedway, and you're with Joe Cool X Racer that everybody knows, and the guy sits there and he tells racing stories, and then his flunkies take you out on the track, and there was nothing useful that I got out of any of those schools whatsoever. In fact, in one of them, and I don't want to name the guy because I like him an awful lot, he's a super good dude, but he was proof positive that you don't have to know anything mechanically about what you're doing to be fast. This guy swore up and down that counter steering didn't work, that you couldn't turn a motorcycle without using the front brake to do it. He just had all these really ideas that were strange, and part of his shtick was spending days convincing you that he was right and you were wrong. Well, I'm a physicist, and I've thought about this stuff a lot and studied it, and he was dead wrong. Didn't want to say anything to him. You know, it's not my place. This guy is, you know, he's a legend, and he has every right. The people that go there aren't really going there for instruction anyway. They're going there to hang out with this famed racer for several days. You know, it all works. That's fine. If you got $3,000 to spend and you want to go hang out with this guy, good for you. So shortly after I left this magazine, I started motorcyclejazz.com, and one of the first things I decided to do was, you know what, maybe I should check out some off-road schools. Maybe I'll have better luck there. And the first one that I knew anything about, hold on here, was this guy right here. Jimmy, you got audio here, buddy?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yeah. All right. So I was just kind of like going around the web and reading about this stuff, and this guy, Jimmy Lewis, kept coming up. Go take his school. So I called him up and said, hey, I'm a journalist, and I want to come down and take your school. And that was, 10 or 12 years ago? It was a while back.
It seems like an eternity, actually, yeah. It was in Pahrump, correct? You came out to Pahrump.
It was in Pahrump. And I remember I went to this guy's school, and the first thing he says was remarkable. I'm Jimmy Lewis. I'm an ex-racer, which means nothing here, but we're here not to talk about racing. We're here to talk about you and how to ride a motorcycle better. And for 2 days, this guy took everybody in this class on a journey that did all of the things I touched on earlier. First of all, he gets right in your head and he says, this is what you're doing. Even if you don't want to admit it, you know he's right when he's talking to you. You're thinking, that's exactly what I'm doing. And it doesn't matter how cool you are. Like, I ride sand pretty good. So, you know, when he took us into the sand, I could handle that stuff. And he immediately starts making it harder for me, just with these little simple things. You get out in the dry lake bed, you think you got this one drill down. He shows you this little wrinkle that you got to put into it now. Okay, well, then do this. And you can't do that. And it didn't matter what the skill level was. In that class, I was one of the only dirt bike guys in there, and I was probably one of the stronger riders that wasn't an adventure bike guy. And it took Jimmy about an hour to give me things that I still can't do the way he wants them done, and that's 12 years later. So I've spent 12 years processing what he taught me in that class, and every time I go riding, I still think about that stuff, and I'm still trying to incorporate it into my riding to make it better. The other thing about Jimmy's class, and I wrote this in the review, is that the guy talks like a physicist, but he's not. I mean, he doesn't use physics terms, but he's thought his way through this. And when he tells you mechanically, this is what's going on with this motorcycle, even if he's not using physics terms, he's talking the right way. Like, you were the only guy I ever met that didn't say, yes, standing up lowers your center of gravity. That's why you should do it. I used to want to take a dagger and jab myself in the kneecap when I heard that.
I said
that.
something similar. I said polar moment of inertia or something like this.
Yeah, but
some other
but you and I talked about it, and then you figured it out.
Yeah. Well, no, some other physicists had come to the class and like loaded me up with those words. And my wife, being a scientist who she is very analytical and learns about stuff, she would listen to them. Like, I'd just say, okay, well, it doesn't matter what it is. Here's how it works. And like you said earlier, I've spent a lot of time breaking this stuff down, and it was when I couldn't figure out how to do something on my motorcycle, and it started with being a racer and wanting to go faster. I would really work hard at doing whatever I needed to do to do that, and I actually came to a limit. I'm like, I can't go any faster. My reaction time, skill level, equipment, whatever it was, I'd find the limit of what it was. And then when we were just bringing it back to regular guys riding dirt bikes, and what I learned through this whole process was, a lot of times it's not the machinery, or it's not your reaction time. It's something very, very basic. And this is why, if it has been 10 years, Martin, you need to come back and take the class again, because we've become a lot better at teaching, because now we're so focused on the basics. Because even when I work with high level guys, and I work with some of the best riders in the world, I ride with some of the best riders in the world, and I watch what they do, and I figure it out. And if they want to do something better, I can't replicate or do that, but I know what the problem is. And it's two things. It's very simple: balance or traction. It's one of those two things, and they're very, very intertwined, those two things. And everybody just throws the balance thing out the window. Like, they don't want to respect it, they don't want to comprehend it, and they don't want to use it. And so our school, that's why we only have one class, because I don't care where you're at, and this is why you struggle with some of those things, is because I think that you're still not relying as heavily on your balance sensors that are in your feet, in your butt, in your brain, and it's stuff you don't think about. You didn't think about how to balance probably all day today. Since you got out of bed, you put your feet on the floor, and did you actually think about the act of the balancing that you're doing? It's a crazy, crazy complex thing. And so, but you do it all day long, and you do pretty good. You didn't have to grab on too many handrails or use a walker to walk around. No.
I did when I had my new hip in. Then I thought about balance a lot.
Yeah. Well, you had to reteach yourself this. Now I can't put much weight on that right now. Now I have to rely a little more on my hands. It's a big problem with the motorcycle, because they give you this really convenient handlebar to hang on, which screws everything up. But back to the balance, it's like nobody even thinks about it when they're riding their motorcycle. And that motorcycle will give you so much feedback in so many different ways. And if you just understand what it's trying to tell you and react to and teach yourself to react to it, as opposed to like just muscle your way. Everybody muscles their way, and they muscle through the handlebars. Is a really bad place it's a very effective place to muscle it. But what I always say is that if let's say you're using 10 or 20% too much energy into the handlebars. Number one, that's transferring weight up higher on the motorcycle, and it's going to affect your traction. And number two is that's 10 or 20 or 30 or 40 or 50 or 70%, because a lot of guys really do, that they're using while they're just generally riding, and then something starts going wrong, and they can't use that very effective way to correct the problem. They've given that up. And hence why, standing up is a better riding position sometimes. Hence why, understanding why you should stand up or sit down. People just say, stand up. There's a reason why. Stand up. You got better control. Like I always say, ask the guy who's telling you that why. Ask the guy that's telling you why you need to practice. Why should I do this? Bend here, put your elbows up. There's all these things you hear. And I always want to know, why should I do this? Because we're all built differently. We have different pivot points. But once you understand that it's all about, balance, and it sounds so simple, but it's so complex. And this is where we spend 2 days with you, and we don't have enough time in 2 days to teach you everything you need to know. But it's the beginning, it's the building blocks. And then and it takes 2 days literally to grasp those basics and start integrating them into your program. And then we have a lot of people that come back and take the class a second time, and that's like a whole different class. It's because you're on a whole different level. Now you're really ready to start learning, because I can talk all I want, but that experiential learning, coming out, having someone that watches you and can say, hey, you're putting weight in the handlebars. And it's always, well, no, I'm not really. Oh yeah, you are. We can see it. So little things. It's little things.
So a very good friend of mine, Jeff Jensen, just took your class. Jeff's a super good dude. He's a Tour of Idaho finisher. He's a pretty skilled rider. And it was interesting because he came back and he called me pretty quickly after he got how much he liked the class and how much he learned. And it was pretty cool because JJ is a good rider. And he got back and he goes, man, I had no idea. He goes, I thought all this stuff was going to be easy. And he goes, this guy showed me all kinds of things I can't do. And so there's a little bit of a come down element of it sometimes.
He sent me an email and said, I've been doing this wrong for 40 years and I'm getting away with it. and he's like, it's gonna be a little hard, but like everything he did, having ridden for so long, everything he did, every adjustment he made, he right away felt it. He's like, wow, it's like my bike works better. I feel the traction now. You could see the bell kind of go ding, and because in the beginning it was like, why am I doing this? And then you play with it for a little while, and then you see ding, and it's like, oh, wow, that works. So,
well, take us through. So we tell everybody in the Tour of Idaho community, we share all your stuff on our Facebook page and stuff like that. And the first thing we tell everybody is, look, if you're serious about going to do this, go see Jimmy and learn how to ride first. Then when you come back, we can start talking about how specifically to adapt what you've learned for the tour. If someone takes your course, walk them through what happens just in general terms in the 2 days. And then I'm certainly interested in hearing about some of the new things that you've got going. I see an awful lot of your stuff on social media. So tell us about the whole Jimmy enterprise.
So basically in our 2-day class, we really start with just, we have a few different ways to make you very, very aware of your balance. Just from the way you get on your motorcycle to whenever you stop, that you're always in balance. And most riders, even high level riders, and let's just say if we're talking about a scale of degrees, like my bike is at like 0.5 degrees maximum. Okay. And most riders will let their bike lean maybe 4 or 5 degrees off to the side. And so one side or the other, whichever one. And you have no idea when we're talking about doing stuff like Tour of Idaho, you're trying to save energy. You're trying to, do things efficiently, and just taking off. And this is where the physics comes in. Taking off at a 4 or 5 degree angle from a start, maybe because you can't touch the ground because you have a shorter leg, or maybe you're just lazy and you let the bike lean over, or maybe you're on a side hill and you feel like you want to be, on that side, that safe side. Well, you've initiated a turn. So now you need to get going a lot faster, very quick, and maybe the traction isn't that good. And so you think about it, if you want to accelerate really hard, you want to be going in a straight line. And all of a sudden now you're doing a turn, and now you're compromising your traction. Maybe you're on an uphill, all these things. So we do these things that you probably don't think about, and we show you how important they are, and we want you to make them a habit so that when you do come to a stop, you can come to a complete stop and then decide which foot to put down, but literally by just leaning your shoulders one side to the other. That's how balanced you are. And this is where we've really gone overboard compared to when you took the class. We had kind of our drills that we were letting, I think in the old class days, we were letting people get away with a lot more because we didn't understand how to teach it better. We knew what it was, but we didn't know how to teach it as well. So we spend a lot of time doing that. And then we've integrated this balance component into every single one of our drills. And we may not talk about what the balance component is, but it's in there, and we make sure you do it. And when you don't do it, we know what the problem is. It's like, okay, they're still not grasping this. And then we can roll it back. And generally the way to find out is just slow down. And that's what I was like with Jeff. That's what I kept telling him, slow down a little bit more and you're going to have a harder time with this. And sure enough, he'd slow down. He'd go, oh, now I see, and that's what it is. Everybody can ride in this, what we call this happy zone. And a lot of riders they can't go as slow as they need to go when they need to go. And then they have no idea where, we call it your excitement threshold, where the top speed is. And if that get over the back and gas it, or when in doubt, just gas it out really worked, or just go a little bit faster and all these things are not a problem. If that really worked, then you should just go faster all the time. Every single time, just go faster, because that should work. But that doesn't work. And the reason you can't go faster is because you can't go slower. And balance, which is the key to everything, when you go slower, balance starts becoming more and more important, and it has a big effect on how slow you can go. Okay? When you go faster, balance has the exact same effect on the other end of the spectrum, and it causes bad things to happen and you to crash. So the same reason you can't go as fast as I can ride is because you can't go as slow as I can ride. And if you don't believe me, just watch the really good
points right here.
Yeah. A couple of really good extreme riders. Watch those guys. Watch them charge up to something and watch what they do. They slow way the hell down, slower than the guys that are not as good as them. They get there, they slow way down before, and they're centered up in their balance, and then they go. They don't roll into it out of balance, and then you watch the end result. When
I used to help you with King of the Motos, that was the most amazing thing. Jimmy would always send me to the check stations that were like 5.5 rock climbs. So I'd go up, and it was like a low 5th class climb that these guys were riding up. And
they were all checkpoints were there. The whole race was that.
You would watch the guys that were not, they weren't front runners. Everybody in that race is pretty good for the most part, or else they don't make it through the qualifier. But you see the guys that are in the back of the pack, and they're just on the gas, man. They're trying to solve everything. They hit everything with speed. They're all over the bike. I see guys break swing arms and do all kinds of crazy things. You watch Cody and Graham and those guys, and you don't see any of that, man. It's like those guys are slow. It's how can that guy possibly ride over that rock that slow? I remember thinking that. But they're fast because whatever pace they hit, through this whole technical section, it's a pace that they feel comfortable with, and it's all about balance. It's the most incredible display of balance you're ever going to see. And then the second thing, real quickly, just a Tour of Idaho specific thing. How many times have I preached to all of you out there listening tonight that on the Tour of Idaho, one of the things you have to pay attention to is the number of times you're going to get on and off your motorcycle. And there's a really good way to do it, which Jimmy has described at least in part, and then there's a stupid way to do it. And if you do it the stupid way, with the number of times that you're going to be opening and closing fences or stopping to check your GPS or getting a drink of water, you'll wear yourself out just starting your bike and coming to a stop. Those are little things that you have to think about. And Jimmy made us do a drill where I'll never forget this, you walk all the way around your bike and just try to keep the thing up with one finger. And that was the whole idea. You don't want to put a bunch of energy into getting on and off the bike. That's wasted energy that on the Tour of Idaho you can't get back. So I had to throw that in there while you were on that topic, and you beat me to the watching the really good hard enduro guys, what they do. It's not fast, man. It's slow.
If you were to put like a speedometer on them, you would see that, like, everybody goes, oh, they're going faster. Well, I would guarantee you that right before they do something technical or something, they're probably going slower. And then when they have the opportunity to go faster, sure, they go faster, but
They
they understand this. They're actually at the, and this goes for intermediate level riders too. It's like, sometimes you wonder why your novice buddy can't keep up with you. It's because every time he goes through a thing, he won't slow down. He piles into it, can't make the turn, hits the rocks, bounces around. So it's these series of non-confidence building experiences that the whole time telling him, man, I'm going too fast, man, I'm going too fast. And you're going, well, you're going so slow when you can be going fast. And it's the case is when they should be going slow, they're not going slow enough. And they won't slow down because they're going to fall over. They're going to lose their balance. Bad stuff's going to happen. So we've seen this for a long time. I've been doing the school now for well over 20 years, and learned a few things. Like I said, we've gotten better at teaching. But and when we talk about all this balance stuff, you do it. And I tell people this all the time. They're like, I don't have that good a balance. It's like, you're walking around. That's pretty good balance. It's a pretty complicated act to walk around. You're just not paying attention to it when you are on your motorcycle and to that level. But then it's like, well, how do I apply this to the things? So the things, we have a bunch of drills. I think we call them our standard drills. We have 20 some odd quote standard drills, and then some of the drills have 4 or 5 what we'll call sub drills that we've kind of derived from them depending on what the need the need is for that thing. But when we're going through all this stuff, in my world, there's only 4 things a motorcycle does. It accelerates and decelerates. This is very easy for anybody to comprehend and understand. It's twisting the gas and going, getting on the brakes and slowing down. And whether you're just turning the throttle to decelerate or you're really trying to slow down and you're using your front brake, which the way I teach in a very idealized way, front brake is 100% of your braking power. That should be done in straight lines because we just don't have the traction to do that while we're turning. And I see so many mistakes made because people just will not understand that they need to speed up and slow down in straight lines. And they expect to be able to especially slow down in a turn, which doesn't work very well. But then there's 2 other things a motorcycle does. And this is, I think, where we're quite a bit different from most other schools. I see some guys that are catching on, maybe because they came and took our school. I'm not sure. But you can initiate a turn and then you can control a turn. And I've separated those 2 for very, very specific reasons. It's very, very rare that you get to purely control a turn on a dirt bike just because of traction. You're sure if you're in a nice berm or the dirt's really loamy and stuff, then you can do a nice controlled turn. The reason we spend time teaching it is because it's the one thing that we teach you that you cannot do really, really slow. You have to have some momentum while you're turning because essentially you're out of balance and that momentum is holding you up. But you don't really, you don't really get
turn. It's the same thing as the ski turn.
Yeah, you can't. And I just had a really good ski guy. He doesn't actually instruct because he gets pissed off because people won't listen to him. But I was explaining to him what I was trying to do on my skis, and he got me on a really steep hill and taught me how to turn my hips and drop, to initiate the turn. And it was like, he's almost teaching it like I teach. He had some different words that he used, and I got it. And he says, no matter how much I talk about this, until you feel it, it won't work. Because most people just want to, they just want to pick the skis up and turn them. And right. you want to just do that carve. You just want to drop in and get them to bend and fold and knife. And but he was teaching me to initiate the turn. And so initiating is something you're doing all the time. It's how you control it. It's just waiting one side or the other. That's all you're really doing. And then you're allowing your handlebars to react, and that bike will set it up. At that point, the bike will set itself up perfectly to go where you want it to go. But if you're weight on the handlebars, all of a sudden the front wheel doesn't follow the line, it doesn't follow the trail, whatever it is. And then since you're always on the bars, you don't even know where center is. You don't even know when you're going straight. So you can't accelerate or decelerate. So it's really, really simple stuff, but you just have to practice it. And we have these drills. That's what our drills do. And you have to make it a habit. You have to make the way that you ride your motorcycle instinctive. And you don't get that by practicing a drill for 10 minutes and then going riding. You've got to practice that drill till you're not thinking about what you're doing, and then you're doing it. Again, experiential learning, doing it by feel, not by thinking about it. Because you have to think about, if I have to think about anything, if I'm coming down at like a downhill thing and I say, oh, switchback, if I have to think about the next 15 things that I'm going to do in the next 1 or 2 seconds, it's too late. For sure. If in my monkey brain, remember, washed up ex-motorcycle racer, former journalist, don't know shit. If I'm coming down and I'm like, and I go, switchback, the only thing I'm thinking about, the one thing is slow down. How much brakes do I have? How much brakes? Slow down. There's nothing else at that point. That's the first and only thing that has to happen, because some alarm went off and it said, hey, this is a thing you need to do. I'm not worried about anything else but slowing down. And so you're talking to a guy who knows what he's doing. And what am I worried about? Slowing down. And everybody's like, nah, not so important. I'll motor right off that cliff.
By the way, Jimmy has a high regard. I've seen you do this before, which is something I respect completely. Jimmy also has a high regard for riding in a manner that preserves trails. And one of the things at the time that I don't know about you, but it lights me right up is you get to a switchback and let's just lock up that rear wheel and just slide right around that puppy. And then when you're going up, just gas that thing, man. And, then the next thing you know, you got a groove 4 feet deep in the switchback. I think none of those are very helpful to maintaining trails. And you talk an awful lot about pivot turns and things like that make that stuff a lot easier and don't damage the trails.
Again, skidding's for squids. and like when I work with racer guys, the biggest thing is for me to teach them to use the rear brake to control the motorcycle, not to slow it down. And the advantage a lot of faster guys have is that they are using the rear brake to control the bike. And so switchback or just general turn, you see how they always get squared out. They kind of get squared up because guys come in there and try it. Your bike does not turn very well while you're on your rear brake specifically. It won't turn at all while you're on your front brake. But so they're skidding into a turn and they're using the rear brake to slow down, and they can't come off their rear brake because they're going too fast, and they won't release the rear brake, which will allow the bike to turn until they've bumped into the turn. And then at that point they fall over, because they've initiated the turn while they're skidding. They let go of the rear brake, bike falls over. It's pointed kind of the direction they want to do. Then they get on the gas and hammer it to rebalance themselves. They haven't even participated in the controlling the turn part of the turn. They've decelerated, tried to initiate a turn, and then they had to get on the gas to catch their balance again. Hopefully they're pointed their proper direction. So these are the things that we do. But yeah, and again, we go back to the best riders in the world. Watch them not spin their wheel, watch them get traction, and listen to the damn motor. It's just lugging. They have the right amount of throttle for the situation, not too much, and they're not, hammering the clutch. Usually guys are using the clutch to reduce the power, which is a really bad technique. And so yeah, it's easy to talk about, hard to practice.
One of the things that I did take away from your class that's benefited me a lot, both in a practical sense, but also psychologically, is these days when I spin my tire in a ride, I consider that a failure. That's one thing that you were really big about, managing traction. When I'm riding up a steep, gnarly uphill, there are times when if I spin the tire, I stop right there, do a pivot turn, go back down and go, now you're going to do it again this time, and you're not spinning the damn tire. There's no excuse for that, especially with a recluse clutch, which I happen to have in all my bikes.
Yeah, and I'm still the same way. It's like I mean, there's time for spinning. There's definitely it's a technique, to spin up and then bog down in a traction. There's times when you just have to spin, but there's a lot of times that you don't need to spin. And even on chewed up, loose, rocky stuff, you'd be amazed at how much traction you can get if you just allow the motorcycle to bring the power level down. And a lot of times that technique of riding a gear high, trusting the torque of the motorcycle. The recluse clutch is excellent at teaching this. I ride with recluse clutches in most of my bikes too. It's because I'm not that good of a rider and I need a recluse to, make up for my lack of technique. That's what the internet's told me, at least. So I just wanted to acknowledge that before someone, just says, man up and get a real clutch, pussy boy.
Well, I remember when I went to your school the first time, I noticed that you had Recluse clutches, and I didn't know anything about them except what I'd heard to it. And I tell everybody this. I said, I looked at Jimmy and goes, man, Recluse, isn't that kind of a cheater part? And you looked at me without a hint of humor in your face and said, yeah, well, get one and go ride harder stuff.
Yeah, they are a cheater part. It's like I love never having to touch my lever. I'm really picky about how I set them up. I have to set them up a certain way because I understand how to use the clutch. And it's like if I'm going to do quote extreme enduro, I'm torn between running a Recluse and not running a Recluse for a couple very specific reasons. And it really depends on the bike. Like now on these TPI 300s, I would run it 100% of the time. On my older 200s, all day yesterday. I rode 60 miles on a KTM 200, an old 2006 that I had one of my old ball bearing Recluses. I don't even know what the name of that one is anymore. The Z Start Pro or whatever. And I was kind of bummed because it wasn't set exactly the way I wanted to, but it's like, I've known this every time I've ridden this bike over the last 5 years. I go, I should go in there and change a couple of the ball bearings to get it to engage the way I want. I just get over it, just ride. So
by the way, should you ever find yourself in the position where you are giving away a bike in a raffle and Jimmy has installed the Recluse clutch in it, make sure that you get very specific directions about the Jimmy setup before you go ride the bike yourself. And make sure they're written down too. You remember that bike we raffled at Climb?
Yeah, I do remember that. That was a Honda. It was a Honda, right? Was it the Honda?
It was a Honda, and you didn't do it. The guy that worked for you did it. And we got that thing up there, and it was like, holy cow, what the heck's going on with this? And just before we're about to give the bike to the winner of the raffle, I remember we were out in the warehouse at Climb, pulling our hair out, trying to talk to you, trying to talk to Ray, I think it was, that put it in, going, what's the setup on this thing? We got to get this thing figured out. And it turned out in the end, it was really easy, but it was a real oddball clutch. It wasn't one of the ones that we could find directions for. It was something that was
I think
either
that
one
bike,
off or it was a little old.
Well, I think that clutch that year for that bike, it was still a new one. I think
it was a one-off. That's right.
They just got the production done. They just started doing production, but they hadn't printed up or made the instruction manual. Like I had to send them some photos. Right. Of the setup because I knew how to do it, so they would send me this stuff. I still do a lot of testing for them with different things, and so yeah, it was I remember that, and it was in that one since it doesn't have the slave unit. The slave unit on the KTM's, the hydraulic things are so easy. The cable ones because that free play gain and the adjustment and it's a high performance part and it's very adjustable, and that's the beauty of it, and that's also the complication of it. When you get it, when it's
of it.
And it's, but if you just follow their damn instructions, I know you're a man and you don't want to read the instructions and follow the steps because it just looks like parts you drop in. Follow their instructions specifically. And then when they have their little tuning thing at the end, that's excellent information. Recluse has some of the best customer support I've ever experienced because I've called them up just like a regular person and asked them questions. And they do a really good job. And I don't care how you feel about it. I like them.
Well, I'll tell you something about Recluse too. That if you look at any Recluse product, it's very clear that that's manufactured in America, by the way, by people that give a shit about what they're building. The machining tolerances are great. And my advice to anybody that's going to buy a Recluse is buy the whole kit. Don't just buy like plates, buy the basket, buy everything. Because the problems that I see that people have with Recluse sometimes is they just buy part of the clutch and like try to use their original basket or something like that. Buy the whole damn thing, buy once, cry once, put the whole thing in at one time, adjusted the way they do it. Go ahead.
Yeah, I've tested all their different stuff, and you can do that, but I promise you every level of, $100 or $200 step you make is a legitimate $200 step in performance. And when you look at the big price of the overall thing, it's kind of like you're getting what you pay for. There's parts where, some things I kind of feel are overpriced, and it's, especially all the ECUs and a lot of these things that people are, doing to a lot of their bikes these days. but there's some stuff that you're getting what you pay for when there's increments, and you can kind of get a taste of it. And the reason they sell that other one is not to sell you a bunch of parts you can't see spin around inside your thing. They legitimately do work better in the case of the Recluse.
They do.
I'll vouch for that. And I'm a cheapskate a lot of times, but then when I want something that's really good, I'll pay for it. And unlike my beer, which I'm going to have one now, Martin, because I know you're on a water diet, but I'm breaking my rules right now.
You know what? I'll be back to drinking moonshine in a few weeks, and I'll get you back then. I got 3 weeks left, and then I'm clear and free, baby.
Yeah, by then I'll do another poop analysis, and they'll tell me, get off the beer.
So, all right. So someone wants to take your class. We got people watching this tonight. We got, we're in the 30s on this platform, but this streams across multiple platforms, and there's a bunch of people out there watching. And what I want to know is if someone is interested in taking your class. I know that you dial it back in the summer. It's mostly in the winter because it's hot down in Pahrump. We'll post up information on the Facebook page tomorrow, but just in general, tell people about what they have to do to take your class. In general, what to expect when they show up. Just walk them through it, because I know that there's going to be some people that want to take it.
Yeah. So in general, we do 2-day classes during the cooler months of the year. So for us, that's October through. Sometimes we'll have a class in May, but this year we didn't. We stopped in April. Actually, just today, last couple of days just started hitting 100 out here. So we can't. It's like learning for me stops at 90 degrees. So we're October through May out here. Sometimes we travel and do some different things. Like I'm going to the Tour Tech Rally. I go to the KTM Adventure Rider Rally, a couple where you can get like kind of a taste of the class. But if you want the full pull, it's 2 days out here in Pahrump. Sign up for our newsletter because our classes sell out, and they have been since we kind of been back up from COVID. And if people go, you never have any dates on the website. It's like, because the classes that we put up there were already sold out before they ever got put up there. It's so usually when we send out our newsletter, people will register. It's not like you have to do it that day. Within a week or two, they'll tend to fill up. So it's probably, and I gotta, we'll get our insurance quote here in the next month, and I'll figure out what's going to cost me to operate next year. But it's $1,000 for 2 days of school. And then we also have rental bikes if you want to fly in. You can fly into Vegas. We're an hour away from the airport. That's not too bad. Or you can bring your own bike, and it's really simple. You just come here with an open mind, and you'll leave with a whole lot of homework to do. And if you do that homework, you'll become a much better rider. You get like a little injection, right from just doing the class. But it's when you do the class and you're working on the drills, you should remember the ones that are real effective, and remember the ones you struggle with, and then go practice these things. And that's kind of stage one, the in-person version. What we've just started, and we kind of beta tested with and Matt Mattoon, Martin, you're responsible.
I'm real proud of that guy. That guy is something else.
He's a physicist now. He graduated UNR with physics. He was a dum-dum when I met him, and somehow the dum-dum liked motorcycles, and his parents were smart enough to take the motorcycles away, and he had to become a little bit smarter to get to ride them. And that, definitely fortunately, meant he had to interact with me. And I told him, look, I'll tell you how to cheat school so you can ride dirt bikes. And he ended up going to college. Now he's back here working with me. And together we've developed this online training curriculum. And so it's kind of his. I'm just a wind-up monkey. Just kind of wind up that little thing in the back, and I go blah blah blah, and we shoot video. But we have a whole online learning platform now that we've done with. We'll call it our beginner rider or learn to ride curriculum. So if you know somebody who wants to learn how to ride a motorcycle, it's a $40 class, and you get all these lessons and drills. So lessons, you sit there and we tell you how it works, and drills are things. It's a video thing you can go out and practice. So we've got this set up with the beginner curriculum, and we're just now getting into our online coaching, where we explain to you how to set up a camera, record what you're doing, send in the video, and then the video gets analyzed and you get an answer back on how to improve or what you're doing right or wrong. And this is we're working on this because of COVID. We literally got shut down. It basically put me out of business for 2 years. We couldn't do the classes, so we said, hey, let's focus on something that we can do. And the cool thing with Matt is he's learning how all the digital platforms are working. He's learning how to integrate a background software and all this crazy stuff so we can manage all of this. And we're going to begin putting our core one, our series 1 curriculum into the same format so we can do it the same way. So we can do like online coaching for those people that have a hard time coming to do it. And we're going to have it to where you can buy like, individual drills. You can subscribe to the whole program. And there's a lot of different levels available, but that's where we're at with it right now. We'd really like to be able to have a really strong digital program so that people, when they want to learn, they can learn now and have it instantly, and then get coaching. And we have some even stuff that's even a little farther out in the future that's going to be really cool, groundbreaking. And that's why I have to have a smart person working for me.
That's genius, because ski instructors have been doing that for years, right? If you go to any kind of a reasonable ski school, video analysis is a really big part of what they do. It's a really good way because you can show somebody over and over, you're not doing what you think you're doing. This is what you're doing. Here's the video. It's in Ultra 6K. There's no mistake about what you're doing. You may think that you're doing this, but that's what you're doing. That video element is genius. That's really good. I think probably, do you guys shoot any video yet at your actual on the ground classes? Because that's another step.
Yeah, so we carry around like our phones and our iPads and stuff, and it just depends on who's there or what we're doing. But every once in a while, when we have like someone that needs a little extra assistance, we'll shoot a video of them, because the assistance usually isn't because 3 of the different instructors have ridden up them and said, hey, you might want to take some weight off the handlebars. Hey, you're kind of hunching over, you're putting a lot of weight in the handlebars, and hey, you're not really standing up. And finally they're struggling with something, and they go, hey, you're not really standing up. And someone will go, no, he goes, no, they told me this 3 or 4 times. And I'm like, oh, so somebody will grab the camera and video them and show them back. And they're like, oh, that's me. So they thought, they were pretty sure that they were doing it exactly like it was demonstrated. And then it was like, no, it's not me. That's me. Yeah, it's you. So
Megan and I record every practice.
Yeah.
Megan and I play every day for at least 90 minutes. We record every practice, and it is amazing when you sit down and listen to that stuff. You think it sounded like this. You think you played at this speed, and you sit down and listen to it and go, oh, my God, it doesn't sound anything like it sounded like in my head. Skiing's that way. Motorcycles are that way. All of those things that involve this complex, your body, when you're doing any of these things, doesn't solve differential equations, right? It's not like a mathematician. It's all organic. But for all of that information to be processed in your brain, it requires a lot more gigabytes than most of us have. But video turns out to be a pathway that's very revealing sometimes, or in our case, audio and video. We sit back and listen to it and go, wait a minute, that chord's not right. I hear it now, but when I played it, I heard something completely different.
Yeah. And I can videotape myself. And even when we're doing recording these for these online drills, I can tear myself apart. I'm like, oh, I could do that better, and I could do this better. And we're talking about little micro adjustments they make a big difference. And so I'll actually learn when we're putting the classes together. I'll go, wow, I could probably adjust this, or I can see stuff that I see in other students. And we're really particular about this. It's not just shoot a video and, blah, blah, blah. It's, there's been some effort put into making sure that it's kind of all the right things. But that's where we're going with the training, a little, like I said, a little more digital, a little more online. And it's, we just want to be a really good riding school. I don't care about anything else. It's one of the best compliments I get from a student is they'll come to the class and stuff, and they'll ask a question like, so Jimmy, have you ever like ridden in Baja or did you ever do any racing? And I'm like, yeah, a little bit. They don't know. They came to the school because it was a good school, so that means I'm successful at this. I adjusted my
go.
camera. I have to point to the other side. I adjusted my camera to throw, some racing credentials in the background there, just to, spice it up a little bit. We were talking in the beginning. I was kind of over here, with my wife's old number plate and stuff there. I said, no, I'm going to go over here and grab some. This is our Tech Talk Taco studio. Tech Talk Taco Tuesday. I can't even say it. Studio, which is that's my our fun podcast / video content that we do every week, where we answer your motorcycle product and motorcycle related or Husaberg related questions, because evidently I like Husabergs a lot.
It's a great show. I usually try to catch a little bit of it, but Tuesday night is almost always Little League basketball or some bullshit like that I got to go to. But I try to catch that show every Tuesday night. It's hilarious. Some of the questions that people ask and Jimmy's response to them are classic.
Yep.
So I highly recommend that.
When we started it out, we thought it was going to be a little more serious, but we're just going down this path of where the audience is taking us. And we're always trying to make the show better. I mean, we really want to make it, it has to have some information, and I can get serious. And problem is somebody asks me a question and I do what I do. I just go down a rabbit hole because I know the answer and I'm doing my best to explain it. But then, my co-host doesn't talk. That's a perfect co-host. He just reads the question. So it gives me time to have a little drink. And then I got a producer over here who's Matt, who's really smart, and all he says he does, he just pushes two buttons, and he pushes my buttons during the whole show. So it's good times. I recommend it only a little bit. If you're bored on Tuesday night, you can catch it on YouTube and Facebook, and you can ask questions. So if you're out in your garage like working on.
I think we just lost Jimmy. Jimmy, dial back in, buddy, and let's get the connection again. When he gets back in, I know we're bumping up against top of the hour. I'm going to have him talk. Here we go. Let's bring him back up.
For a second?
Yeah,
Am I back?
We dropped for just a second. Yeah, you're back now.
Well, see, no, since I was talking about Tech Talk Taco Tuesday, that means there's technical difficulties involved in anything that we it's like kickstarting an old Honda XR with two carburetors, okay? It's going to take some time, and it's not going to be right until it gets rolling. And once you're rolling, it's all good. Just don't stop. So that's how we run the show. So hopefully that, but anyways, I was going to say that yeah, you go ahead. It's on you.
We've got a tremendous delay going on right now. Your connection is a little slow tonight, and there's a big delay going on. But I want to turn you loose again. I just want to steer it. We've been in about an hour, and before we get out of here, this is the Tour of Idaho community. Jimmy Lewis finished the Tour of Idaho. He's done it. He made a movie, which is one of the greatest things that I ever saw in my whole life. The fact that Jimmy showed up and made a movie of something that I did is something that I'm still trying to wrap my mind around. It's a great film. I rode with him and helped the cinematographer, Will, with some support issues. It's the funnest week I ever spent in my life. Even when Jimmy was yelling at me, which he did every once in a while, I had a great time that week out riding. So, Jimmy, talk to the Tour of Idaho community. Tell them about, your experience with it a little bit if you want to. And then just, if you could, talk for a few minutes about, we call the Tour of Idaho the Tour of Energy Conservation. And the thing that we hammer away with all the time is, look, you have to be efficient, because you just can't consume enough calories over what's now 13 days to keep making for these hideous mistakes. You drop your bike off a side hill a couple of times, you're kind of knackered. You're probably never going to get that energy back. I recommend you push through creeks instead of trying to ride through them, because if you dump your bike at a creek, you're kind of knackered. It's time, it's energy, it's all kinds of things. You rode a really good tour, and the thing that I remember is in the few places where we rode with you when we were filming you didn't ride very fast. You got to the end of the day pretty fast because you kept up a really good overall pace, but I never saw you. I was amazed, because there were times when I thought I was going to run over you. And then it occurred to me, yeah, but it's because The dude is he's got a pace and he's in the zone and he's going that pace. He's not tired at all, and I'm wearing myself out. Talk about that.
So yeah, Tour of Idaho video. If you haven't seen it, 154,000 views. I just checked it real quick. I just went and clicked over there and saw that. That's like, I didn't know that many. Anyhow, it all comes back to just, it's not what you did last week or the month leading up to it or the 6 months. It's what I've been doing for the last 5 years. And that's what kind of gave me the backbone to have the success that I did. I raced motorcycles professionally. I did long distance racing. I ride all the time. This is what I do. So in that essence, the tour was kind of, quote, easy for me. But when we start talking about, like, if you just kind of want to go and do it, you have to kind of build some of this, we call it base miles in ultra running. You have to do your base mile work so that you can, when you need to perform, you're doing something that you've done before. It's repetitive. It's easy. So riding the motorcycle, understanding how to set your motorcycle up, kind of knowing what you're going to feel like in 3 days of riding, which some people on their tour, like the first time they've ever ridden 3 days in a row or 4 days in a row and long days is on the tour. And then you're going to have some very new experiences. You're going to have muscles that tell you how much they don't like you. You're going to have your motorcycle that's, getting beat up because you don't get to spend that time working on it. It's all these little things that go in there. And the videos are kind of a good example of that. Cause we had a great time. I had a great time doing it. But it was in like when he talks about, like, when we had our little things, it was like, I'm like riding down a trail that isn't a trail. It is a trail. And I think it's the same experience a lot of the guys have, because they haven't necessarily done the homework, really reviewing the routes and plotting the routes and stuff. And in that time when we did it, it was a matter of, I think, just a couple of waypoints that were just a little bit off, and they ended up on one trail as opposed to another trail. And then one trail that was, maybe you wrote it down and I wrote it up, but who knows where it is, but you just got to, like I always say, know your size. When you get out there and you get into something, know what you're capable of and know when to, call it or turn around or take some time. But back to that, riding efficiently is something that I work on, quite a bit. I mean, my biggest problem with riding is I always say, yeah, I'm going riding to get in shape or to stay in shape. I don't use any energy when I ride. And this is the downfall of all of the training and all of the techniques that we use. I don't use any energy. If I start having to use energy, I'm riding at a pace where I could get, kind of crash, get hurt. Things could go wrong. And I don't like doing that. So it's just a matter of, you're just very efficient, minimizing the mistakes down to the nth degree. Like I said, just not skidding. If I'm skidding, something's wrong. I was going a little bit too fast. So not skidding is important, and just, learning how to roll through turns and not having to push any place. And it was funny because I think you were every morning, especially when I was in Pocatello, even the morning we left, you're like, shouldn't we leave a little bit early? I'm like, I wasn't too worried about it. I always see these guys leaving at like 2:00 in the morning to ride. I've watched a couple of the other videos that guys have put out. They're leaving like, before sunup. And I'm just going, is it really that hard? This is what's in my head. Is it really that? And I know you've increased the level of it, but I recognize all the trails. I'm like, it kind of seems a little bit like day one. It's a little bit on a different side of the highway in some spots, but I've ridden those trails. I'm like, I would have much rather rode over there. This is what I'm thinking while I'm riding the tour. I'm thinking about where else I would like to ride. Sometimes I'm riding on a trail and I'm going, I know there's another trail over here, but then the brilliancy of the tour for me was having so much experience riding in different segments of Idaho. You connected some stuff that, unless you're committed to get from point A to point B, you don't get to ride this stuff. There's no gas station. You've got to go, or you have to have some sort of support in between there. You've got to be prepared to take this long trail section and go from A to B. And I got to ride places that I probably, wouldn't have explored. And then in doing that, I crossed over some areas. Like, now I want to go back in there and camp there and ride that trail system or see this area. So that's kind of that's it. But it's I think in my world, it was just I had practiced. I'd done my practice. I'd done my homework. And in my riding, I didn't have to modify my riding technique. That was my riding technique, is to ride like that. And even when I was racing, to a certain extent, when you're riding like long distance races, things like that, you have to know when to race and when to ride or survive. And it's the combination of that. So.
Well, if you come up this summer, and I hope you do again, you, Horton, and I will go out, and I'll take you over and do some of the new stuff, which I almost guarantee you haven't seen. That we added 2 new days to the tour this year, and they're in real remote areas of the state, and we're calling it Mystery Route because we're not telling you where you're going unless you get to the day before. If you get to where you're supposed to be the day before, you get a set of directions about where you're going the next day. But there's some trails in there that are the coolest things I've ever ridden in my life. And there's a bunch of it. They're long days. But we've probably got 1,000 miles of single track trail in the tour this year. It's just incredible. And it's high quality stuff. It's not this nasty, knackered out, rutted out stuff that's no fun, like that stuff up around Custer. This is really high quality stuff that you can kind of roll on. But it's just day after day, 10,000 foot passes, incredible scenic views, real single track with like real side hills and stuff. So you got to pay attention, but it's in such a great place. You're so impressed by the position that you're in. You're really not worried about the peril of falling off the side of the trail.
Hey, I still have my bike. Yeah, I still have my bike. I actually just rebuilt the entire motor on that 500 because it was like at a lot of hours and had a rough time on some rally training with someone else on it. So I just rebuilt that. The Tour of Idaho bike is ready to go again. It's ready for. It is a 2014 or something, but it's the same thing. I got a new.
Did you ever fix the wiring harness in it? Does your fuel injection work now?
Yeah, the fuel pump turns on when I turn the key on. Yeah, that's good. Yeah, you can watch all this stuff. Actually, I just told some guy had the same problem as me, and he went through all this thing, and his fuel pump magically worked again, just like mine magically worked and magically shut off and magically worked. And I said, hey, check your ECU to wiring harness connection, because I have no idea why mine came apart, because I never touched it before, but it did. So all kinds of, and those are the things. You've got to keep your stuff together so that so that one of the questions Jim Spooner's asking, I know it's been a while, but is there anything you learned from your tour that you can share with those giving an attempt this summer? Here's my advice, Jim. This is it. This is the nugget of knowledge you're going to get. If you have all your stuff, no matter what, something out of your controls that you do not expect, that never would ever happen to anybody else except for you at that moment, will happen to you on that tour. Don't screw yourself by worrying about all the other stuff. Be prepared by being relaxed and ready to solve this quote unsolvable problem. That was my tour. It was over. Like I said, I coasted the bike down a mountain, found a guy to give me a ride into Pocatello, and I said, hey, let me just give it one more shot to try to fix this thing. And it did. And then I kept going. So, yeah, that would be
Jimmy meet Jim. Jim meet Jimmy. Jim Spooner was the first guy through last year. He's a soloist. Jim Spooner is 6'4" of solid muscle. He's an athletic trainer, one of the fittest people I've ever met. And this dude was the first guy through real early in the season, which means a lot of sawing. And at one point in 6 miles of trail, I think he sawed 600 logs or so. It was something insane that he had to saw. And we were watching him, and he was moving like 5 feet every 10 minutes. It was just incredible. And that was, things like that happen, and you got to really want it too. I mean, it's got to mean something to you, or else the amount of work that you have to do is just going to be too much. Even you were a little tired in a couple places. I remember you getting in my grill pretty good one night at one place where you said this day was going to be easy.
Yeah. Oh no, that was the day where I went up the downhill kind of a thing. But the challenge section was brilliant, easy, flowing trail. It had a lot of exposure, but just the best thing. And then I went back onto
you're
the
the
normal
only guy
trail.
that's ever said that was you're the only guy that minimizes the exposure on that trail. Everybody else goes up that stuff, and the direction does matter. But some of those side hills you got to approach with it's a little tough because there's steps and stuff where there's side hill exposure, and most people don't take that as casually as you do.
Hey, if you're in balance, Martin, if you're in balance, the trail that's really narrow becomes very wide. It has like 6 different lanes in it, and this is
I
the
know,
thing
but that's
about,
why
like,
you're you and I'm me.
no, you walked, you got out of bed and walked today. I think you possess all of the same balanced things. You just have to fine tune them. Hey, I got another question here. Jeff S. Toes, that's his name. Jeff S. Toes.
Jeff is the guy that runs the Cat in Kentucky. He runs a big ride back in Kentucky that's very well respected all throughout the East.
So the reason I mentioned his name like that, it says, what's the best way to maintain your feet while on the tour? Which is a very pointed question at my video, because I do give you a view of my feet. So Jeff, I think you have a foot fetish. So I'm not going to answer your question. I think you need to go see somebody that can help you with that. Because I close my eyes. I don't even know why we put that in there. Another. If you haven't seen the video, then you haven't seen my feet, and I don't know if I knew a better way to maintain my feet. I haven't found it yet. I've actually found some much better compression socks that have better venting. Since then, somebody sent me a pair, believe it or not, said, hey, try these. God, what are they called? They were called Moto Skivvies. And the climb socks that I'm wearing all the time are good. These ones are really gnarly compression socks, and literally they're hard to get on, and it's a relief when you take them off, but my feet tend to fare a little bit better. So hopefully helps out. And Jim Spooner had the same problem with the feet, I guess.
Have you tried that Climb GTX boot? What is it? The GTX Adventure, maybe? It's kind of their, it's sort of their Forma style boot. Have you tried that? Because I love mine.
Yeah, see, I have, and for adventure riding, they're really good. I'm not a super big fan of that really lugged sole. And the reason is I'm so critical with my micro adjustments on my pegs, constantly walking around on the foot pegs. I find that lug sole kind of like locks me into, it's almost like getting clipped in on a mountain bike or something like that. But I like them on my adventure bike when it's not so critical and I'm just cruising around. And because you get off and you walk, and the boot is just, you put your foot in that, you don't even want to wear a sock. That's how good the internal of the boot is. Good boot. So I have used it, but I like a very, very stiff sole and a very protective, like, lower. I only have 9 toes, so I'm dealing with a short hand there. So I want to, have a really. So I end up running the CD boots most of the time, the SRS ones with that replaceable sole.
Yeah.
And for most people, and they have in their last generation gotten a little bit wider because they were too narrow for most people, me included. But I would just run a size big. I would let them be a little long so my foot would fit in there just fine. And so I've gone back from 11 back down to a 10 now in those boots. But those are the boots I wear. But, it's, again, back to another thing for the tour. Know your gear, know your equipment, know what you're using. Don't show up with, your first day in boots.
Oh, God, yeah.
2 days later,
Please.
learn about blisters. Or
show up with a GPS you've never used before. Show up on a motorcycle that's brand spanking new that you're taking the price tags off in the parking lot, the Hotel Malad. We see all that every year.
Yeah, I get it because I see it. I see the same thing in the school. We have people show up with a lot of brand new stuff because they're excited. They want to get something, they want to use it. But I would always say, kind of test it, make sure, just be familiar with tires, whatever brand you decide to run, whether you're running Mooses, know how long they last under these kind of conditions. It's common, it's normal, it's procedure for me because this is what I do. But again, that's why if you're listening to this right now, you're probably trying to gain some valuable information. And that's what we're really trying to give you here. And as much as I like to poke fun at Martin, like, listen to what he says. as like I said, you're just don't worry. You're just an old dude that you're like a crotchety old guy that invented this tour to torture everybody and make fun of them online while they're out suffering. I know that's what you did, but what in reality what you're doing is you're really trying to get people from point A to point B in Idaho through some of the best, most amazing trail, show off your state, allow them to challenge themselves, and you're there to help them. And all of the stuff, sometimes when you're even, like you said, you may seem like you're kind of poking fun or, pounding your chest, like this. It was all good advice. It's all sage advice. And it comes from experience. And yeah, I'd done this kind of stuff before. And when I look back, everything you said was putting me down the right path. And when we would argue about where a point was, it was like, you could just go, well, you didn't look at the map close enough and you were right. So.
You know what? I have a saying I've had my entire life, which is pretty good. If they can't take a joke, fuck them.
Yeah.
We have a lot of fun here. We don't. I'm old school, and I come from the school of thought that if I don't like you, I don't tease you at all. So if you're talking to me and I'm saying, yes, sir, this waypoint, you are absolutely right. This waypoint was a little bit off. I'm very sorry for that. It means I think that you're a dork. But if I'm saying,
that's what you told me.
Hey, ass lips, why don't you look at the fucking map? That means I actually kind of like you. Ask the White Claw guys. They got the full treatment.
Oh, yeah. Maybe you told me that too. I don't remember.
There was some witty repartee.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. Well, and I kind of told you, like I said, Martin, I don't want to do the tour, but I don't want any of this challenge bullshit. I just want to go riding. I've raced for so long where everybody set me in this set of rules and this guidelines and stuff. It's like when I go trail riding now, it's like kind of want to do it on my own terms and have fun. And so I took all the information and there was even like one challenge thing that was out along the dirt road out to a lookout. And I wasn't keeping track of challenge points. I didn't know how I was doing it. And in fact, if I got to the end of the Tour of Idaho and I didn't get whatever award or reward I was supposed to get, that wasn't going to deter my enthusiasm for having a good time and enjoying myself. But there was 40 miles out and back to a lookout or something. And I got there and I'm like going, because I just look at the track log and I saw I was out and back and I looked and it was on a big road. And I'm like, well, I've had a really good day riding single track. There's more single track in front of me. And I've been to 6 other super awesome lookouts. I don't care how good it is. And here's my logic. It's like, if it's so good and he tells me that I completely wrecked my tour, I'll go get my damn adventure bike and ride back out there on that. Because it'd be more fun than my 500 right now. I'm going to keep going on single track, and that's how I would make decisions on the tour. It's like, hey, what's going to be the most fun thing for me today, irregardless of what the
Jimmy is being way too modest. Jimmy actually did a really good job on the tour. He even slept in the rain one night to try to because we had Will and I slept in a really nice RV. Jimmy's out there in the rain going, nope, no help. I've got to do this on my own. And yeah. Jimmy also was aware of the fact that anybody can go ride the Tour of Idaho Trail. The maps are up. Go ride it and have yourself a good time. What we're trying to do with the Tour of Idaho is not just show off the state, but it's stacking the odds against you, which is something that that's gone beyond most people's ken. They want all of the odds to be stacked in their favor. So in other words, the concept that you could set off on some big adventure and not make it, that's unacceptable anymore. Everybody's supposed to get a participation trophy. That's not what we do. This is old school. And the whole idea is that it's built up so that the odds of success actually aren't that high, and it could be due to no fault of your own. A fire pops up in front of you. You're knackered. Your bike breaks, which is not an uncommon thing. You make a single mistake, and it just rolls. It gets bigger and bigger. And that the thing that pleases me the most is the number of people that don't get it in the beginning, but then all of a sudden at some point the light goes on. They go, wait a minute, this whole thing was against me. If I make it, it was not only because I did some right things, but nature smiled on me. And I think that's a wonderful thing. Not everything goes your way all the time, and there's a lesson in that. And the guys that don't make it typically come back a year or two later. They're better prepared. They have better luck. One guy that's watching tonight, third time was the charm. I mean, he had 2 terrible things that nobody could have possibly seen coming happen to him on his first couple of trips. And that guy didn't whine and talk about, oh, it was a crappy bike that I bought, or oh, the directions were bad, or any of this stuff. He goes, nope, bad luck. Then third time was a charm. Third time he had a really good trip. And, I spent a lot of time, I'm coaching youth football right now. And I tell these guys, the least important thing in this is the outcome of the game. This is kindergarten football. I don't care whether we win the game or not. What's more important is that you took a 3-step drop and threw the ball 20 feet to a guy that caught it. That's the thing that's important. And in the Tour of Idaho, it ain't getting to Sundance Mountain with enough challenge points. It's the most important thing. Yeah. It's that you went out there and you got involved in something that's bigger than you. You don't control all of this. You don't get to make the rules. You kind of have to go with the flow. That's what climbing was for me all the time. The mountains were bigger than me. The weather was something you could never factor in. Rockfall, avalanches, things like that. And it really was a humbling experience. And when you did make something, I never felt like I conquered a mountain. I felt like, dude, that was pretty sketchy, and I'm just happy to be here. That's kind of what we're trying to do in the tour.
My boss at Rebel Rally, Emily Miller, one of her sayings that she likes to use all the time, if it was easy, everybody would do it. And you have to earn it. I mean, and if you didn't earn it, if I just rode through the tour and said, it was easy, and I won't say that. It was not easy. There was days that challenged me. Watch the video. Like I said, the one quote I love from that video, and I'm glad that Will got it on tape, was, I said, man, I really like riding dirt bikes, but that was a little much. And that was 4 days of buildup coming. And like I said, it was a day where it wasn't, my expectations of the day weren't exactly what they turned. I thought it was going to be an easy day, mileage wise, descriptions wise, everything said it was going to be easy day. It was the hardest day on the tour for me. And for whatever reason, doesn't matter. But at that point, I was earning my stripes. And when I got to the finish, I was finished. I did it. That was good. I'm happy. And like, did I want to go trail riding for another day? Not really. I was happy to go back and, look for the net, whether I was going to hit a motocross track or go ride an adventure bike. Cause I'm like that, with the motorcycles, got to have them, but certain amounts and certain doses, but yeah, earning it. And yeah, so when you fail, it just shows that, then you decided what kind of a person are you? You're going to take it, or are you going to, learn from it and go to the next thing?
Yeah. And sometimes it has nothing to do with you. That I think there's a lesson in that. That's the way life is. Sometimes it's
out of your control.
It's out of your control, and you got to learn to accept that and move on, or come back again and just try it again. You don't always get everything the first time. We have guys that show up, and I know you follow this and you know this, and they like make spreadsheets and they do all this crazy stuff that's way over preparation. And then they're crushed when they don't make it. And it's like, I appreciate the fact that this meant enough to you to do all that, but mainly you just show up and ride. You got to do some nav prep, know your stuff, know some first aid, understand how the wilderness works, be able to fix your bike, but then just go out and ride and have fun. And if you had fun, if you rolled up on a pass and looked around like we all did at the top of that one pass where you met me sawing logs. It's in the video. Yeah. We're all up there looking around going, how cool is it to be where we're at right now? How many people have ever seen this, much less on a motorcycle? That's what it's all about. When you roll up someplace and go, wow, that was cool. You're going to remember that the rest of your life.
Yeah. And I mean, I had, I'm not kidding you, 6 to 10 of those experiences, during the tour. And largely it wasn't more because I'd been to some of the other places already. But just, that's what makes it cool. I mean, and I just hope that, people understand that, they respect the work that's gone into doing it, the work they put into it. And it's, what's the other term? We always say that, there's kinds of people. There's consumers, and then there's I should know this because we were talking about it the other day when we saw someone dug the shit out of an uphill trail. There's consumer. What's the other thing? What's the other word? I'm forgetting right now. But
Producers,
assets and liabilities. That's what it is. There's assets and there's
liability. There
liabilities.
you go.
Yeah, it wasn't. It's there's and the liabilities are generally consumers. They just consume. They don't put anything back into the system. Whether it's going out and doing trail work. Build. You make a couple water bars on a trail, move some rocks. Trim some bushes. Cut logs. You do this stuff. It changes the way you ride trails. You all of a sudden you think about those thousands of miles of trails you've ridden and how much work went into getting them there, and not only that, keeping them open and available so you can go ride there, because the powers that be don't really want you riding your motorcycle out there. And we're a small group that's motivated to go out and go riding, and sometimes you have to kind of swallow that pride pill and go out and do some work on a trail, or get involved in some of the land use stuff, and that's also very, very important.
Yeah, it's you and I have talked about this quite a bit. It's we're the last generation that's going to be able to enjoy these trails the way we are right now. 50 years from now, I don't think you're going to be able to ride your dirt bike in the woods like we do today. A lot of that stuff's going to go away, and I'm very pessimistic. I would be delighted to be wrong, but it's another thing Jimmy and I have worked on. We've worked on some trail advocacy issues together. And it's depressing when you get into that. Most of the world does not like you on your dirt bike, and a lot of it's due to ignorance. It's hypocrisy. There's all kinds of terrible things that go into it. I know you've done some good work down in Pahrump. You guys got yourselves an off-road park, and aren't you on the committee that put it together?
Yeah, I'm the chair of the. I'm probably going to get kicked off because I can never make the meetings because I'm always traveling. But we've got the property. We've set corner posts in. They've done the perimeter trail. Now we're working on our sound mitigation stuff with sound barriers and getting ready to fence it off and start construction. So yeah, we're well on our way. I mean, it's just I want a place for the kids to go. I want the kids to be able to get exposed to dirt bikes and to keep them out of trouble, because that's what kept me focused out of trouble. I'm lucky, blessed to have been able to make my bad habit my passion and my joy. Look at Matt, who's now working for me. It's like dirt bikes managed to push him into college, just like it did for me. I went for medical insurance, and he went because he talked to you and he thought physics was cool. And so it's
Matt, by the way, please give my regard to Matt. That I know the kid's journey, because he and I roughly had the same journey getting through college.
Yeah.
And what that young fella did is quite extraordinary. Not everybody can do that.
Yeah.
And it's most people go into physics and they're like, wow, this sounds pretty hard. Well, you know what? It is hard. And you got to sit down.
Easy,
you got to
everybody
do
would
some
do
work. That's right. And when you think you've done enough work, you just scratch the surface. It's an ungodly amount of work. And Matt didn't think he could do it, and we convinced him. Jimmy and I convinced him he could do it, and he got his degree. And he's your physicist now. He's your own pocket physicist.
Yeah. He goes off on tangents like I do on motorcycles, talking about physics, and then my eyes start spinning around in circles. But it's like, hey, that's why you went to school, and we're gonna put that to use here, Matt. Just give us a little while. So,
all right,
yeah.
Jimmy. Listen, I really appreciate you spending an hour with us tonight, more than an hour now. If anybody has any questions, we can bullshit you guys all night long. So if you got anything you want to ask Jimmy right now, put it up. And Jimmy, you can see the comments there. If you see anything else that you want to respond to, we can go another 5 or so minutes, and then we got to rock and roll.
Right. No. If you have any questions, throw them up. And you can also, if you got your question, and you're not going to get in tonight, you come on to Tech Talk Taco Tuesday tomorrow night. And you can throw it up there. We get to most of the questions in the chat. It's we're, like I said, live on Dirt Bike Test YouTube and Dirt Bike Test Facebook pages, and then those things are on the internet someplace. Somebody else is in charge of all that stuff. I've been trying to stay away from social media to a certain point, but I'm unfortunately, because of my business, I have to be in there. But it's been pretty cool. I mean, I wish I could pay more attention to some stuff, but then there's too much other stuff that distracts your bandwidth. But
really quickly, tell us about Dirt Bike Test and your relationship with it, how it all works.
So I started Dirt Bike Test right after I was relieved of my job at Dirt Rider magazine. I was the editor there for 8 years, I believe it was, and previous to that I was 12 years at Cycle World magazine. And I just, after just a few months off, I realized how much I really enjoyed testing motorcycles, which I still do. I do quite a bit of it more now in a private, R&D setting than I do in a public thing. But dirt bike tests, we test motorcycles and products and stuff all the time. And the online portion, we do bike tests. And I've got a couple kids that are young up and comers that are interested in doing it. So I'm really trying to teach them how to properly test motorcycles and be, decent journalists. Although I don't know if those two words go together that well anymore. The problem is the manufacturer will send us a press release and we find all the inaccuracies in it. I mean, it's like, aren't you guys supposed to do this? Okay, well, the people that are working for them aren't much better than the journalists that are out there, and everybody just, swallowing the pills and hoping for the good effect. And it's a strange time. I mean, frankly, we don't get invited to a lot of the introductions and stuff anymore because they say, well, these YouTube guys, they get 144,000 views and you only get 30. I'm like, yeah, how many of those bikes are you going to sell? Like 8,000? I talked to every single one of the people that bought that bike, not a bunch of people that were looking for a fancy video. And I understand you're talking about brand awareness and stuff, but there's people that still want information. And we try to go a little bit down in the nitty gritty with the testing and try to do it properly and try to tell you whether the bike is right for you. We want you to read it and have an understanding for how it works, not whether it's good or bad. That's up for you to decide. You should be able to read our stuff and go, you know what? I don't like the stuff that Jimmy Lewis likes. He likes smooth power and he likes really progressive suspension, and he's, he can ride with a big gas tank and it doesn't bother him, all these things like that. You get to know us. We have personalities, and then you can decide whether you agree or disagree with our personalities, and hopefully can formulate your opinion of the motorcycle. And that's
I cannot recommend dirt bike tests to you enough. Having worked in the industry myself, I loved every second that I spent as a moto journalist. There's nothing wrong with going to a racetrack in leathers that you didn't buy, boots you didn't buy, on a motorcycle that costs $50,000 that you didn't buy, and gas you didn't pay for. You get to ride all day as fast as you want, and nobody hands you a ticket. There's nothing wrong with that.
No, they hand you a sandwich and lunch.
They do. It's food. A good lunch too. But the problem with that is there's a price you pay for that. And the price is there are a bazillion guys that would like to have your job. And what you have to do to keep that job is keep everybody happy. And that often runs counter to telling the truth, what you actually thought. And even if you tell the truth, your editors will be unhappy and they will change that truth. So it's a fun industry to be in, and I loved it. I loved every media liaison I worked with. I love the engineers. They're all good people, but the fact of the matter is most moto journalism, most publications exist as advertising for OEMs. That's my opinion.
Yeah, it's a fair opinion. I wouldn't say they're advertising for OEMs. It's just everybody wants to keep getting invited back. And if you go against the storyline, we'll call it, maybe you don't get invited back because there's like I said, there's somebody else. And now it's so easy to create media. I mean, this phone here can do everything that all of my cameras and all my computers and stuff would do so it does. You can be a media star. Just show some boobs or something like that, and you're good. We don't have any.
Yeah, and it's real easy to find people that'll say what you want that will propel the narrative. I know this because I watch Taco Tuesday and I read your stuff. How many times do you see something that some influencer put out there that's just the press release? All they did was regurgitate the press release. They know nothing about the product.
Well,
that used to drive me nuts. I would see that in publications and I'd go, that's the press release. This person didn't touch that motorcycle, but they're trying to give you the opinion, the idea that they know this firsthand when all they're doing is regurgitating what they were told in the press conference.
Yeah, that's true. It happens all the time. I see it more than I care to. I mean, even now it's just they want to post it so quick they just repost the press release, and so we actually kind of dig into them a little bit and try to talk, try to at least put a spin on it. Something that you can. give you a little bit more information than press release, and when it is a press release thing. But then when it comes to going and riding the bikes, it's like it's those. The manufacturers are getting to the point where right now they're selling everything they bring in. So there's not a whole lot of reason to have a lot of opinions that can't be controlled. Let's put it that way. Somebody will say what they really think. And there's a few that do say what they really think, and they get to stay sometimes, or they get slapped every once in a while. But the good thing is I have control over dirt bike tests, and we don't do that yet.
The hell of it was, I thought most of the motorcycles that we rode were brilliant. They were great. They were wonderful motorcycles.
Right.
It's really hard to find a bad motorcycle, in my opinion. Maybe a Ural or something, but
you can
the major OEMs.
You can pick the wrong motorcycle for you.
Yeah, that's it. You can pick the wrong one for you, and some of the aftermarket stuff is no bueno either. A lot of times, you bolt on the spendy $2,000 full titanium hand-welded aftermarket exhaust, and the performance of the bike's actually worse than it was before. By the way, and that is
I'm
that
helping
leads
out.
to the last
I'm helping
thing
out,
here.
Jim. Yeah, I'm helping out Jim. He was like, where else can you get the best info on bikes, but excellent tequila reviews as well? We're actually thinking about changing the name. We went with Tech Talk Taco Tuesday and Strippers for a little while, because if you put "and Strippers" on the back of anything, it gets better, viewership. But we're thinking we haven't had tacos for a while. We got kicked out of the Mexican restaurant because my friend retired. But now we're thinking about making it Tech Talk Tequila Tuesday. But then we would lose all of our ratings that we've got, but we're working on. We're going to get it figured out. So
all right. So I spent 5 minutes teeing this up, and you're trying to blow me up with tequila now. What is the best upgrade that you can make to any motorcycle?
A better rider. Yeah, put a better rider on.
There you go. It's on your shirt.
Yeah. Hey, we have and another thing, we have the Better Rider podcast now, which is, I think we're 7 episodes in. And that's a little more serious. It's not except for the one I did with Crazy Nate. The latest one we released is a gem. We wanted to put Crazy Nate because we knew it'd be a good show. We need to get him on Tech Talk now, because then it's off the hook. But we try to give a little nugget of riding knowledge in the thing, a little free advice in there. But we're trying to introduce you to our staff and show you how we teach, and so that's another thing I'm doing. I just in front of the camera all the time now. I'm going to go riding.
All right. Hey, brother, thanks a lot for coming on tonight and spending. I know your time's valuable, and I really appreciate you spending this time with us tonight. Any final thoughts?
No, valuable is all depend on how you define it. I had a really good time. I like I said, meeting you is an awesome thing. Getting to do the tour was a super awesome thing. And the people that come to the class, we get a fair amount of guys that are planning on to do the tour. They aspire to do the tour is huge. And I aspire to do it again too. I'm one of these days I'll like I did last time. What did I call you 2 days before I showed up and said, Martin, I'm doing the tour.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's the kind of planning I do. So
that's another inside Jimmy story. Jimmy usually gives me a full 6 hours of notice before he shows up at my house. He generally calls somewhere in the middle of Utah and says, I'm on my way.
Yeah.
And, I remember one time, it was funny you did that. You said, I'm going to be there in about 4 hours. And you showed up. We sat there all day and drank PBRs outside my RV. And it was during tour season. You remember that? These guys were rolling up. Like 2 or 3 teams rolled up, and well, that's Martin. Who's that other guy there? And finally, like the third team, the last team of the day rolls up, and one of those guys is standing there going, is that Jimmy Lewis?
I rode up on an adventure bike, right? I just was passing through my adventure bike that time or something.
Yeah, a couple. We were just sitting out there drinking beers, looking like a couple of old codgers. It was funny.
Yeah. It was a good time. So, hey, awesome being on the show, Martin.
Take care.
I'm sure we'll talk to you soon. Thanks.
All right, get up here this summer, man. See you later. All right. Once again, you've wasted a perfectly good hour plus of your life tonight, not with not one, but 2 knuckleheads. And I don't know why y'all do that. Surely you can find better things to do. But I'm nonetheless, as always, thrilled that you did. Thanks a lot for joining us tonight. I'm sorry that we didn't get a chance to talk about any of the Day 8 stuff, but we'll get in Day 8 and Day 9 next week for sure, and maybe Day 10. I've got the Day 8 stuff up. I got it up this afternoon. And I'll get day 9 tomorrow, and day 10 will be pretty easy. All I've got to do is rename the waypoints, but nothing changes there. And we'll try to have everything up right around that window I talked about, first weekend in June, thereabouts. Some of you guys, a lot of you tour vets have been PMing me about, coming out this year and stuff. I'll get back to all of you guys. As I explained to a couple of guys earlier, I'm afraid to turn on my IM sometime because every time I look, there's like 50 messages in there, and it's impossible. So I will, but those of you that I talked about, let's get together this summer, or I'll show you where to go. I will reach out to you, and when you get here, just stop by if nothing else, and we'll hook you guys up. So once again, thanks a lot, and let's thank our guest, Jimmy Lewis, who's still watching all this, hooting some tequila. We'll see you all later on. Cheers.